Election Day is 1 week away. All elections are important, but this one is especially critical. From childcare to paid family leave and reproductive rights, there's a lot on the ballot this year that directly impacts parents and caregivers. And so, ahead of Election Day, we put together a special Election Week episode, compiling the most relevant snippets from our earlier interviews with politicians and public policy experts and advocates. This includes commentary from Congresswoman Katherine, Chamber of Mothers co-founders Erin Erenberg and Raena Boston, Reshma Saujani and Orli Cotel of Moms First, and Bobbie's Sarah Hardy. We hope you enjoy this episode, and if you haven't voted already, make sure to get out and vote on November 5th. Our first clip is from our conversation with Congresswoman Katherine, who has served as Democratic whip since 2023. She has been the U.S. Representative for Massachusetts' 5th Congressional District since 2013. We spoke to Representative Clark about how affordable and accessible childcare is not just something that is nice for parents, it's actually a really important economic issue. In this clip, she shares what success looks like with childcare and what's stopping us from achieving more affordable and accessible childcare.
Have you seen major changes since when you were in those earlier days when your children were really young? What has changed and what has not?
Yeah, I really, it is the frustration of this work is that it is very slow. And I think there are a few reasons for that. And one of them is that childcare is predominantly provided by women and women of color. And women's work has always been a replacement for a government-funded social safety net. So we undervalue women's work of all types. We underpay or don't pay equally women's work. And then we rely on the work of women to care for our own children as they are unable to afford working full-time and more than full-time to care for their own families on the wages they're paid. So it's a very layered cultural reasons why we're here. And it is really going to take a paradigm shift that we started to see in the pandemic. And we need to continue because the pandemic really drew back the curtain on the fact that we can no longer say, oh, this is just a private decision between parents and providers. There is a public good here. And I don't often, as a leading Democrat, get many chances to work with the National Chamber of Commerce, but they want to work with me on childcare because they understand this is a workforce issue. And if we want the economy to recover, if we want to continue to have opportunities for women and retain women on workforces, we need to address this issue. And they're all so layered together: paid leave, equal pay, childcare. And we're behind other developed countries with just an example of toddler care. Other countries invest on average $15,000 of public funds into a toddler's care. In the United States, we invest $500. And wow, that difference makes a huge difference in how kids show up ready for school and how parents are able to participate in the workforce.
I think about that a lot because I have one child who's in first grade public school, and the amount that we celebrated when finally we had access to public free education, which of course is not free. We pay taxes for that, but you know what I mean? We are no longer paying for that private daycare or a nanny or whatnot. And I know that in Massachusetts, and this is at the state level, they recently announced universal pre-K starting at the age of 4. And so there are a lot of states, it seems to me, and I know way less about this than you do, but it seems like there are certain state initiatives where states are rolling out different programs. How does that impact your work?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it is helpful. It is a right step. I just don't see how states can truly help with this conundrum we have in childcare that we pay very low wages to early educators, and we have very high costs of tuition for families. And being able to bridge that to pull up wages without further exacerbating the costs of childcare, it's going to need federal help. And that is what all these other countries have discovered. And we are just slow to the game. But we have to take the focus that the pandemic put on childcare and continue to build on that. And we're going to have to do it with private business. Businesses of all sizes have been some of our best partners in helping us redefine childcare and recognize it as this economic infrastructure. So I think it's all helpful, but at the end of the day, we need to make this push. And it is childcare, and it is also care for adults, because I know that was certainly part of my story, was still having school-age children and two parents who were very incapacitated and were not, needed full-time care. And that fell primarily on me. And that is a story of women across this country who are caught in trying to meet their family members' long-term care needs as they age, and still having to deal with the high costs of childcare. And we should get out of the fact that, just like you said, Allison, that we celebrate and wait for that fifth birthday because it means freedom from childcare tuition.
Yeah. I want to ask, what does success look like with childcare, and who is stopping us from getting to that point?
Yeah. And, I think success looks that we can change this model, that we can recognize that from infant, toddler to preschool care is really part of a public education system, and treat it in that same way. This should be, we've gone way past in our research, in our understanding of brain development, this idea that somehow this is glorified babysitting. We know this is fundamental, and especially for low-income children, the exposure to rich language programs, the social developmental growth. I mean, for all kids, it is a tremendous benefit. And it is absolutely necessary for so many families who have two working families or single parent households. We know that, I hear from this issue in the high costs from as many grandparents as I do from the parents themselves, because they're watching their children struggle under the cost and not being able to find the childcare that they need. So success is going to be defined by this recognition of bringing up the professionalization of childcare providers, and also helping parents reduce this cost. And, it's going to be we need a sort of a slate of pro-family policies, including paid leave and pay equity. But childcare is really going to be a critical piece. So universal pre-K and really policies where families do not have to spend more than 7% of their income on childcare costs.
Our next clip is from our interview with Orli Cotel, a senior advisor at Moms First, who has spent nearly a decade advocating for paid leave. During her time at Paid Leave for the U.S., she helped win paid leave for more than 8.5 million people at companies like Walmart and Starbucks. We got right into it and asked her how the 2024 election matters for paid family leave. Let's talk about the election. So I got so many texts and messages when Kamala, I think it was her first speech, and she mentioned paid family leave in that speech. I think people were like, wow, does this mean that this is going to be one of the main things that she is talking about? How does this election matter for paid family leave?
Well, first of all, I'll go back to what I said before. elections matter. Elections matter for the most personal parts of your life. It's not something that's just distant and remote for us. When you look at the workplace rights that you have, when you look at how things are going for you in your career, there are decisions that our lawmakers make that impact our careers and our lives. And I'll zoom out for 1 minute and talk, for example, about one of the most important pieces of legislation to pass in recent years about workplace rights, especially for women and birthing people, was a law called the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. And that passed just a couple of years ago. And it was a very, provided very basic protections, things like saying that a pregnant person should be allowed to have a chair to sit on at work, or a bottle of water, right? Or an hour off to go to a doctor's appointment. Protections that a lot of working people in this country still don't have, but are absolutely critical. Seems like a basic no-brainer that everyone would support. There were 24 US senators who voted against the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, who literally voted against letting a pregnant person have a bottle of water and a chair to sit on at work. That was shameful. And, if I were a constituent in one of those states, I would want to know about that. And I would want to make sure not to vote for them again, because there should be consequences for those kinds of actions. So when it comes to this election coming up, I would say that Harris-Walz is the most pro-paid family leave ticket we've ever seen in this country. A lot of people don't know that Kamala Harris and Governor Walz both have been big advocates for paid family leave in their own careers. So when I was at the Paid Leave for the U.S. campaign, Kamala was one of the first candidates who we endorsed because she was such a strong supporter of paid leave. And in particular, she had called at the time for 6 months of paid family leave. She was going a lot farther than other folks. And I've also heard about her own experience, being with her mother in hospice in the last days of her mother's life, and her own experience as a family caregiver, which I'm sure has really influenced her support for why comprehensive paid family leave, going beyond parental leave, is so important for everyone. And Governor Walz he signed paid leave into law in his home state of Minnesota. So
I'm a Minnesotan, so I'm right in the thick of that. Yeah. We were very happy when that passed. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I say that 14 states have statewide paid leave, Minnesota is one of those, and he's been a champion. And in fact, he was on the Ezra Klein podcast recently. And when he was asked what should be the top priority for Democrats if they win this election, he said one of the first things they should do out of the gate is pass national paid family leave. I also am sure that his time as a teacher impacted him in this area, because, teachers are among those who are least likely to have paid leave. So I'm really excited to see paid leave be a front and center issue in this election. And I think, again, one of the things we really need to do is keep up the pressure and the momentum so that paid leave can move forward, after November.
Up next is a portion of our conversation with Raena Boston and Erin Erenberg, co-founders of Chamber of Mothers, which is a nonprofit advocating for paid leave, affordable childcare, and maternal health. We talked with Raena and Erin about their Vote Like a Mother movement, a voter registration and education initiative that empowers parents to learn more about all candidates' positions on the topics most important to parents. Let's talk about Vote Like a Mother. Tell me about that. Is that a campaign? Would you call it a campaign, a movement, an initiative? I would love for you to share more about that.
You can call it all those things. You can call it all those things, Allison. Yeah. So Vote Like a Mother is IP. It's a federal trademark. We were gifted the IP right when we started. And quite frankly, we were so new that we knew it was amazing IP and there's a community built around it, but we weren't quite sure what to do with it yet. Now that we have stood up our own 501c3 and we're organized and we have our strategy in place, we look at this election year and we know how important it is. Everybody has seen what happened in Kansas and Ohio when women turned out and stood up for their reproductive freedom, which we see as a big part of maternal health. We know it's part of maternal health. And so we see just such an opportunity for mothers to come out and vote according to interest. So Vote Like a Mother is a campaign that we're doing in concert with a few partners. I Am a Voter. I Am a Voter is providing you can text right now, anybody listening, you can try it out, do it right now, text mother to 26797. And not only will you go through the steps of being registered to vote, you can look up your status, you can find out where your polling place is, you can get information on the upcoming elections. Super important, you can download your sample ballot. So keep having this theme of time poverty. Moms have so much on our plates. You don't want to go into the election feeling unsturdy. You don't want to go in just influenced by external sources. You want to be able to download your sample ballot, take a minute when the kids are down, when you can think straight, when you can go on and Google, who are these candidates? What are the issues? What do I care about? Google candidate name plus childcare plus maternal health plus paid family and medical leave plus whatever the issue is that you care most about. Find out where they stand. See what the initiatives are when your local elections are coming up, and really take a minute. So Vote Like a Mother is all about voting according to your interests as a mother. It is a bipartisan campaign. We're not telling you who to vote for, but we are telling you to look up your status, get really sturdy on what you believe and what candidates and what measures fall in line with what you believe, so that you make decisions related to voting that are according to your own interests.
And related to your motherhood, right? I mean, I think that's an interesting way to think about it. Is I originally was wondering if you were going to do more to explain, here are like the 5 different things that parents care about, and here's what each candidate feels. And it's interesting to me that you've structured it. You're not doing a prescriptive type of resource. It sounds like it's much more almost just reminding people, vote with that identity and those priorities that are important to you as a parent, but of course as a mother, in mind.
It's
100%.
Also a rallying cry. Yeah, it's a rallying cry in that you can vote like a mother for climate change. You can vote like a mother for parental leave or paid family medical leave. You can vote like a mother for childcare. It is, to me, a rallying cry, and it's a very empowered way to advocate, and also for moms to know that the things that they care about are important. They should be prioritized. They are kitchen table issues, literally. These are gigantic things that impact our economy. And you should vote like a mother for those things that matter.
100%.
We're getting close to time.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say, to center your identity as a mother in your voting decisions. It's very in line with what we're doing with Chamber of Mothers. Again, like, what are our affinities we have in common? What are our needs we have in common? If we all are centering our voting identity in motherhood, we can make a change together to create a country that better serves mothers. And that's our mission. It's uniting mothers as advocates to create a better America.
Yeah, and I think the reason it struck me when you first described it is mothers almost always put ourselves last. And so it's this rallying cry to say, put yourself first, which actually isn't even that much about you. It's about your family, and it's about your community, and it's about everyone. So I love it. I think it's so smart, and it is really inspirational. Our next clip is from our conversation with Sarah Hardy, co-founder and chief people and experience officer at Bobbie. Bobbie is a female-founded, mom-led formula company, but they're also very well known for their advocacy work. Sarah testified in front of Congress about the childcare crisis and its negative implications on working parents in the United States. She also uses her platform to push for paid parental leave in this country, like through Bobbie's Parents Push Harder initiative that launched this year. We asked Sarah to tell us more about this campaign, its purpose, and how businesses can get involved with the coalition supporting this movement, which Parentally is proud to be a part of.
We're running out of time, but I have 2 questions I want to make sure I get in. Parents Push Harder. Tell me about that.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we love a good campaign, and we love a good advocacy campaign. this is actually a pretty incredible story. So Naomi, her team reached out to us organically. We were thrilled and shocked.
It's amazing.
And it was one of those moments where, and she, appreciated what Bobbie stood for and who we were in addition to our products. And we ended up kicking off, this relationship, and it became clear to us that Naomi's return to work, back to the quote unquote court, would be incredible to document. And normalizing that when a parent has a baby, going back to work is the same whether you're one of the world's most famous tennis pros or if you're going back to a regular office job and whatnot. So we thought it was a great opportunity to really share her journey back to work and to take a stand to drive more eyeballs, to drive attention towards getting federal paid leave passed as part of this opportunity. So at the top of 2024, we launched a campaign called Parents Push Harder. And it did just that. It talked about her journey to becoming a mom and going back to the court and what that looked like and the trade-off decisions that you have to make. And what we did was, in launching the campaign, we also decided, hey, you know what? How are we going to activate all the eyeballs that we have on this particular moment? And so we chose the Family Act to drive people to. The Family Act would guarantee a minimum of $580 per family, welcoming that child to be able to use for whatever it might be in that first, period of time. And so we said, you know what? We're actually going to do some grants and offer $580 and have people write in and talk about how would they use the $580. Originally, we thought we would do 50 total grants for this. You're not going to believe this, Allison. We got 11,000 applications.
I totally believe that. It's
1,000.
Yeah.
And I just remember that moment being like, this cause is worth it. 11,000 applications to make a case why $580 mattered to that family. I honestly, I feel emotional just thinking about it because it just talks about the power that some of this legislation really could have in American families. And so we did what we do. We looked at each other and said, oh my gosh, this is totally unexpected. We didn't think we would get this amount of inbound interest. And so today we've actually onboarded 38 other partners that have helped us fund 200 of these grants, up from the original 50. So if you're a business leader out there and you want to get on board, parentspushharder.com, please go. We have started a coalition and we're binding together these businesses that have come together in this moment for the long haul, to continue to figure out what are the ways that we can collaborate and to make our voices heard from the private sector, that it is really, really important to the health of our business and the wellness of our employees to get something like federal paid leave passed.
And this last clip is from our exclusive interview with Reshma Saujani, CEO and founder of Girls Who Code and Moms First. Her nonprofit tirelessly advocates for working families, especially as it relates to paid leave and affordable childcare. In fact, their efforts helped get questions about childcare into this year's presidential and vice presidential debates. We interviewed Reshma back in December of 2023 after Moms First launched paidleave.ai, a tool that helps caregivers maximize paid leave benefits at the state level. We talked about why they launched the tool, how it works, and the ways it'll allow more workers to access paid leave in New York. Since this episode aired, paidleave.ai expanded to additional states and DC, so be sure to check it out if you haven't already. I'm going to dive in right away. So hot off the presses, we got the press release. Paidleave.ai is, according to the press release, an AI-powered solution that guides expecting parents and caregivers through the paid leave eligibility and application process, first in the state of New York, eventually, hopefully other states as well. Through the tool, users get checklists and other guidance to keep them on track to obtain the maximum benefits and time off they need to care for their families. We're going to talk more about what this is, how people can use it. But before we get into that, I wanted to start with, why did you build this? What is the problem you're trying to solve here?
Yeah, well, at Moms First, we're on a mission to win paid leave and affordable childcare everywhere, in as many states, as many workplaces as possible. And we know that in order to do this, we have to innovate and we have to look at this problem in a different way. And we need to engage as many people as we possibly can. And so the reality is that there are amazingly 13 states that do offer paid leave, even though we live in the only industrialized nation that doesn't offer paid leave. So 1 out of 4 women go back to work. 1 out of 4 women don't have access to paid leave, and they lose, as much as $10,000 during that time period in wages. And so many moms today are having to pick between, quite frankly, taking care of their children and going to work, which is unconscionable. And we also know that the states that do offer paid leave, when you go onto their websites and you try to access these benefits, it's complicated. It's cumbersome. And if you are a busy mom, especially if you are a single mom of color working in retail, barely having the time, quite frankly, to take care of what's happening in your family, much less go on a government website that isn't helpful, you often give up. And you lose those wages, you lose that money that you desperately need to feed your family. And so we wanted to change this. Now I wear, I have 2 hats. I'm founder of Girls Who Code and, founder of Moms First. It's like my 2 worlds kind of collided and came together. Mm-hmm. And as I started looking at generative AI and talking to people like Sam Altman or Satya Nadella, a lot of what we talked about was the power of generative AI to actually help real people, to really play a role in public sector problems like the uptake of paid leave. And so paidleave.ai was really born out of that mission, right? Of how can we get as many families as possible in New York State access to paid leave? And how can we use generative AI to make it less cumbersome?
And so let's move into the solution. Yep. You've built this tool. Right now it's just in New York. I believe eventually you want this to be for all of the states that have paid leave. How does it work? How can people go and actually use this? And how is it different than going to ChatGPT, for example?
Yeah, well, we launched paidleave.ai with Novi and Craig Newmark Philanthropies. Craig Newmark, for example, and talk about the amount of men that we have in this space, I think, that are champions for families. I mean, both Craig, Dimitri, and Elias are just incredible people, and all dedicated their time, quite frankly, pro bono to help us create this solution. And our goal is simple: is to, if you're a parent, to go on this website and be able to know, am I eligible for paid leave? How much money am I going to get? And give you an action plan. So you leave with something, when you know exactly what you need to do next. And so when you go to the paid leave website, for any state, quite frankly, it is not that simple. So we've, when you use generative AI, you use LLM. So we took all of the information from the paid leave state website, from Google, et cetera, and put it, basically put it into this tool. And so when you go on it, you can ask any question. I'm a mom, I'm a single mom. I work at my job for the past 2 years. Am I eligible for paid leave? Or, I'm going to have a Syrian section. How does that change this? So any question that you quite frankly may have. And the thing to remember, right, this, Allison, is that a lot of women in particular are not comfortable asking their employer because for fear of retribution. So there's no one you can really ask, am I eligible? How do I access it? What forms do I need to fill out? What do I need to know? And so this is a website you can go to safely, to answer your questions.
I think there's also an interesting aspect here around what a company provides and also what you are legally allowed to access. That's also interesting to me because I've seen a lot of people who work at companies where maybe they only receive 8 weeks of paid leave from their employer and they have no idea that actually you could take 12 weeks and fine, it may not be 100% paid because the state program doesn't pay 100% for those additional time weeks that they take. But when I saw that you had built this, I thought that this was incredible because even for people who work at companies that get a lot of paid leave, they still struggle with this because a lot of companies leverage that state pay to allow them to offer paid leave.
Absolutely. We make it so damn complicated, right? Because you got to have disability benefits, you get something from your state, you get something from your employer. And here's the great thing about this tool is you can ask all those questions. My company offers me 6 weeks. I am going to have a C-section. So you know exactly how many weeks you have total and where it's coming from, which I think is really, really important. I felt like I'm a lawyer. I thought, and I work in this space, I thought I knew everything. And then as we were kind of digging in and building this tool, I learned so much more in my own ability to understand what the benefits are. So I could explain it to a friend or a neighbor or et cetera. So again, we make it so confusing. And here's something else, and what I love about what we're doing is, yes, it's about paid leave, but it's also about the fact that, government sucks sometimes at customer service, and especially for people who need it the most. Because this is paid leave today and Medicare tomorrow, or student loans, or again, there's so many benefits that families are entitled to, quite frankly, but we make it so hard for them to access them.
We hope you found this recap helpful as you navigate your decision this election year. If you want to listen to any of these full interviews, you can find links to each episode in our show notes.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The False Tradeoff. Make sure to subscribe if you like what you heard, and give us a follow on LinkedIn to continue the conversation on all things working parenthood and parental leave. Is there a topic you'd love us to cover in a future episode? Drop us an email at hello@parentally.com. And if you're looking for support on preparing for parental leave, head over to www.parentally.com. We have checklists, guides, and other free resources to help you make the experience a little bit easier. That's PARENTALY.com.